Hello, hello, and welcome back to the No BS Homebuyers Live series, where we are breaking down the process of home buying into simple steps so that you can go from thinking of buying to actually owning a home. Today, we're going to talk about listings. And if you've ever read a home listing and thought, wow, that sounds great, and then you thought, but what does that actually mean? This is the episode for you. So, we need to understand that listings aren't supposed to lie, but they definitely aren't always telling the whole story. So, being able to translate that and decode these listings is going to help you shop smarter and help you avoid wasting time. So, let's talk a little bit about what listings are. Listings purely are just marketing. Their job is to make the home sound as appealing as possible to as many possible buyers. So, you being the buyer need to understand what is actually being said. So, we're going to take some of these cool words that you will typically see in a listing and kind of translate them into what that really means and what to expect. Because you're not just reading the listings, you're translating them and turning them into something that is usable for you and finding out if it's even worth your time to check out. So let's break down some of the most common terms that you're going to see, and let's see what they actually mean. One of the first ones that I really like to go over that I think can easily get confused and can become jargon for people that aren't in the industry is SF, which stands for single family. That would be just a traditional home. There is only one family, single family living in the home. So it doesn't have multiple units. Whereas MF is multifamily, which would be multiple units. Maybe you have two different areas or two separate entrances. Multifamily can be for 2 to 300. It doesn't matter. It's an unlimited number, but typically in the residential space, multifamily is going to be representing a duplex, triplex, or quadplex. Once you get higher than that, you get into commercial financing. So those are two of like kind of the common ones that we just think, is obvious. And single family could also be SFR, so single family residence. You could see SF as square footage as well. So just kind of different things you got to read into the context of what is being said so you understand what it is referencing. But other ones that I really oftentimes see that can be a little bit more confusing would be TLC, which means tender love and care. So that means it needs work. That could mean it needs a lot of work, or it could just mean it's a cute little grandma house that hasn't been updated since it's been built. So when you see TLC, that can typically speak to you're going to get something a little bit outdated, something that you could add some sweat equity is what we call it, which is some work to the property to build it up to be more of a modern feel. TLC typically doesn't just mean a candle and a deep clean is needed. It typically needs some repairs. So just kind of keep that in mind if you see TLC. Don't go into that house and think, oh my gosh, it's going to be perfect. It's going to have some things that need done. This is a favorite one of mine, cozy. Cozy means it's small and it's cute, maybe, but mostly it just means it's small. So cozy means you're all cozy tight together because there's no space, which isn't always a bad thing, but people started using this, and this was a house that was built before the tiny home movement is typically when you see this. Before tiny homes were cool, they call them cozy. So just expect small with cozy. Even if the photos make the house look huge, a lot of realtors will use wide angle lenses to get the full view of the homes. But if you read cozy in that description, expect those photos to feel a little smaller when you're inside. Another one that people don't always understand is as is. This one matters in context of what the sellers are asking or saying that they're going to be doing. And that essentially means they are going to be doing nothing. As is how it sounds. You are buying the house as it is at this moment. So they're not planning to fix anything. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they won't give you some sort of credit to fix things, but they, whatever their circumstances are, do not have the resources, means, or want to fix things. So if you see as is, don't go in with the expectation that you're going to get an inspection and that the sellers are going to fix a whole laundry list of items. It's just probably not going to be the case, and everyone's going to be really unhappy if you go in with that mindset. So if you see as is, just be prepared that, you may be able to get some money off, but you're going to be doing the work. And as is doesn't mean something bad. It just means you're taking it as it sits. There are a lot of situations where sellers are either not really involved or not physically able to do something. So that's why they're selling it as is. You see that a lot of time in estate sales. Some family member took it over. They live out of state. They don't have the resources, the connections to get the work done. They just don't want to deal with it. So oftentimes you'll see as is with that. You will oftentimes see as is with some investor properties as well, or things that definitely need some work, and they're aware of that. Hopefully you're seeing that accounted for in the price, and if not, you should be asking for that to be accounted for in the price. But typically it just means they're not willing or able to do something to the house. I love this one, low maintenance. So that can mean a couple things, and it sounds really great. Sometimes it just means that they have newer furnaces, utilities, things like that. So in theory, it should be low maintenance. However, when you are buying a house, just understand Murphy's Law is in full force. What can go wrong will go wrong. So even if something is expected to be low maintenance, don't expect that it's always going to be low maintenance. It's a house, things break. But the one that I really like is it actually typically means that there's not a whole lot to the house, whether it is a tiny house or there is no yard. If it says low maintenance yard, that means you've got about 10 feet of space to work in. So that's pretty much what low maintenance means. And it could also mean that it just doesn't have a whole lot to maintain in general. So there may not be a whole lot of amenities that you were hoping for when it says low maintenance. Investor special. So this one gets attention really fast because everyone thinks they are an investor. However, a lot of people will use investor special or made for investors, calling all investors, if they think it is a good potential rental property, if they think, or like a multifamily, or if it needs like some major work, like a flip. Investor special is typically what that's saying. So expect some work to be done, and it should be on the lower price range, but it's not typically anyway, because everyone wants as much as they can get reasonably. That's a fair thing to want. But if it says investor special, it probably is really good at not showing all the things that need done in the photos. So just be prepared when you walk in there that there's probably more to be done than meets the eye. Or, it's got potential to make it a multifamily or something like that. Investors really have a hard time with this one because people will post on like investment specific pages, just traditional listings. And they're like, this is not an investment. I want a good deal. It may be stinky. It may be ugly, or it may be just, has multiple options with it. That's what investors want. But most of the time people are just putting investor special, even though it's probably not really that great of an investment. And or it needs a lot of work. So kind of going off that investor point is house hacking. So this is a term that you're probably going to see more and more descriptions or hear it from agents. It's a newer term. It is when a traditional buyer lives in the house, but then also rents out a portion of it, whether that be, renting out a room or renting out like a separate unit if it's a multifamily, or if it's a single family that has a separate entrance and can kind of be separated off. House hacking is when you're using the home as your traditional home, but then adding some sort of income revenue. So that is something you're probably going to see coming up more and more. And honestly, is a really great option for first-time buyers if you're needing some extra income to help you kind of cover that mortgage comfortably. Can be a really great option. And it can reference, again, separate units. It can reference renting rooms. It can reference like renting a garage out on the property. Anything that can bring you additional income could be considered house hacking. All right, now let's touch on some red flags. These are things that the listings don't necessarily say, but you should be paying attention to. Probably the biggest one is few or no photos. Usually this means that they're not highlighting something specific. It could also mean that it is a rental property with a tenant in the property currently. If you get like two exterior photos or one exterior photos, oftentimes there is a tenant that is living in the property and they don't, want their personal items being posted online. So it's not necessarily a bad thing always, but you need to, again, read into the context of what's going on. But if you're seeing very few photos, it's pretty unlikely that there is a lot of good things to highlight. So just kind of notice that if that is something you're seeing in the listings, that's probably a red flag. And unless you're truly in love with this property, it might, you might wait to see that one if you're worried about maintenance and things. Another red flag would be vague descriptions. So if it's not very specific, there's usually a reason. Most agents, to be honest, are using ChatGPT to write their description. So they are very fancy and wordy and have all kinds of fun things to highlight. If you've got a one-liner, good house, nice neighborhood, you're either really there's not a whole lot to highlight about the house, or you just are really lazy as an agent. But I would say most of the time it's the house. There's not a whole lot to highlight. So that can be a bit of a red flag. And the less the listing is saying and showing, the more you should question it. Other red flags would be just repeated price drops. If the house looks great online, but you keep seeing price drops and it's been on for a while, one, it could mean it is overpriced, and that's very plausible. But it could also be that the buyers are noticing something else about the house that just isn't very explicit on the photos. As to why it's not getting offers and things. And this is a great situation where you can ask your agent and just be like, hey, can you reach out to the listing agent and just see what the feedback has been? Because I'm really surprised to see that this hasn't sold. What are buyers saying? And then what they respond with can help you determine whether or not you're going to go see it. Like you could find out that, the siding needs replaced and the sellers just aren't willing to do it. So, if you have a cousin that does siding for really cheap, that might be a great option for you. But if you're someone that doesn't have any extra money or doesn't want to put anything additional towards it and the sellers aren't willing to work with you on it, then maybe it's not worth your time seeing at the moment. And then another red flag would be the overuse of buzzwords. Again, ChatGPT is writing a lot of these descriptions. And so they are probably taking into account SEO and all these things. So if the whole description is just buzzwords and then it doesn't even match the photos, you might be a little hesitant. That might be a red flag to maybe check out other properties, or just, go in with the mindset of it might not have all of these things. It might be a little fluffed up. So when we're reading these listings, we just want to take this information and not necessarily cut off options to see, because there are situations where a house, the listing description sucks, the photos suck, but the house is fantastic. And that can happen. And honestly, great for you, because you just found a really good house that nobody else is seeing because they're not marketing it very well. But I want you to take these listing descriptions and be able to kind of look past the adjectives and look more on the facts, the things that really matter to you on your wish list. And then I want you to be able to compare them to other listings, and you may start to see little things in the photos that, are kind of like, that's not exactly what I'm going for. So I'm going to wait to see this one. Whereas this one matches more of what I'm thinking and what I can see. So it's not necessarily eliminating everything, but it is taking your time and being strategic about what you're seeing, because you could see hundreds of homes and then you're going to get burnt out. So use these listing descriptions and some of these keywords to decide what is actually worth touring. And if you ever have questions, just ask your agent, because they'll be able to tell you a little bit more, like, I'm pretty familiar with this agent and they use this in every description. I don't know that I would expect that. So just use these descriptions to be smart with your shopping, because smart buyers don't shop emotionally. They shop strategically. And by being able to kind of differentiate, you will have a better chance by understanding some of these terms. So once you are able to understand and decode these listings and the language used, everything changes. You're going to stop guessing on everything and you're going to start making confident decisions. So the more you understand, the less overwhelmed you're going to feel. And that makes it a lot easier in your home buying process. If you need help reviewing your listings that you're kind of checking out or figuring out if something is a good fit for you, I can help you with that. I can help you find the agent that can help you with that, because each market is a little bit different. But it's very important to have someone on your team and to kind of have an idea of what people are talking about and setting your expectations ahead of time, so you aren't just like blindsided when you get into these homes. And hopefully some of these terms helped clear up some of that information for you. Well, thank you for tuning in. And if there aren't any questions, next week we are going to dive into another step. I believe it is going to be finding the right neighborhood. And that's going to help you move forward with more confidence and clarity and help you getting to actually owning a home. Because as I said earlier, this series is the No BS live series, where we're breaking down the whole process into simple steps so that way you can go from thinking about buying to actually buying. So if there are no questions, I am going to go ahead and log out, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.